Some people wake up every morning rehearsing failure in their minds without even realizing it. They look in the mirror and feel the weight of what hasn't happened. They check their bank account, not to affirm abundance, but to confirm the story of lack. They speak to the universe with hope, but inside, they're still preparing for disappointment. And it's not because they're weak or wrong. It's because something inside them is still afraid to assume victory, afraid to believe it's already done. Maybe that's been you. Maybe you've built vision boards and whispered affirmations, but deep down there's a voice that says, "Don't get your hopes up." That voice is not your enemy. It's the ghost of the past protecting you from one more heartbreak. But today, that ghost doesn't get to write your story. Neville Goddard said, "Assumption, if persisted in, hardens into fact." And that's not just poetic. It's biological. As Dr. Bruce Lipton teaches, your subconscious mind isn't just a belief center, it's a program. And if that program is still running on the energy of doubt, lack, and waiting, then no matter how much you want change, your nervous system is preparing for what you fear. That's not weakness, that's protection. But it's a protection you no longer need. You're not here to rehearse loss. You're here to remember what it feels like to trust the invisible. And this is the real pain, isn't it? The pain of getting your hopes up and watching reality contradict them. The pain of believing and then seeing nothing change. So instead of leaping into the unknown with open arms, you brace yourself for the fall. You tell yourself, "Let's be realistic," when what you're really saying is, "Let's not be hurt again." But that pain, it's not a signal to stop. It's a signal to look deeper, because you were never wrong to want more. You were just taught to fear believing in it too much. Here's the sacred twist. Assumption isn't just thinking, it's identity rehearsal. It's who you allow yourself to be, in silence. Not who you hope to become, but who you already are. If you stop performing doubt, the one who assumes doesn't chase. They choose. They walk with the quiet certainty of someone who knows the seed has already been planted. The one who assumes does not wait for signs. They are the sign, not in arrogance, but in vibrational authority. The shift happens the moment you stop trying to convince yourself and begin living as if nothing needs to be proven anymore. So today, we're not talking about hope. We're not talking about effort. We're not even talking about belief the way most people understand it. We're talking about what it means to energetically embody what you desire, until it's so natural, you forget to question it. We're talking about spiritual posture, about emotional alignment, about becoming so familiar with the version of you who already has it, that the world has no choice but to reflect it. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're no longer contradicting it. This is the art of assumption, not a technique, a becoming. And in this space, you are invited to become, quietly, clearly, and without hesitation. Now, let's begin. Assume the outcome, not the process. There's a quiet addiction that keeps so many stuck. It's the obsession with knowing how it will come, when it will arrive, who will bring it. This craving for certainty is disguised as logic, but beneath it is fear. Fear that if you don't manage every step, the dream will slip away. But here's the sacred truth. When you try to control the process, you unconsciously doubt the outcome. You say, "I trust," but your energy says, "Only if I see how it's going to work." And the universe, it doesn't speak words. It speaks vibration. To assume the outcome is to lean back into the invisible, to say, "It is done," even when the path is unclear, not with passivity, but with energetic authority. It's the knowing that the seed you planted is alive, whether you see it sprouting or not. The one who assumes the outcome doesn't micromanage the rain. They know the soil is already doing its part, and so they walk differently. They move with expectancy, not anxiety. Most people don't even notice how often they interrupt their own manifestation with questions about how. Should I message them? Should I apply again? Should I visualize more? These aren't questions from the one who has. They're echoes of a self who still doubts. You don't need more effort. You need more surrender. Not to give up, but to give in to the truth that the outcome is already yours, and your only job now is to let the path reveal itself. So feel the difference. How will it come? Holds the vibration of distance. But it is done. I'm watching it unfold for me. Holds the vibration of arrival. This one sentence rewires everything. Not because it's magical, but because it realigns your nervous system from control to trust. You're not here to build every step. You're here to embody the destination so deeply, the way makes itself known. Assume the outcome. Let the process surprise you. That's how the invisible becomes real. Assume the identity, not the reward. What you seek is not outside you. It's within the self you haven't fully dared to become. Most people chase the reward, the money, the love, the freedom, without realizing they're still carrying the identity of someone who doesn't have it. They visualize the dream while walking with the posture of lack. They affirm abundance while secretly preparing for rejection. And then they wonder why the universe seems silent. But the universe isn't confused. It's reflecting the vibration you're most loyal to, your identity. To assume the identity is to stop pretending to be someone on the way and start being someone who's already arrived. It's subtle, it's sacred. It's not about performance, it's about vibration. The one who assumes the identity doesn't ask, "How do I get this?" They ask, "What does the version of me who already has this wake up thinking?" That one thought shifts your internal axis, because now you're no longer chasing, you're remembering. And it's not about faking it. It's about accessing the version of you that already exists in potential and letting that version take the lead. That version walks into rooms differently. That version chooses, responds, breathes with different intention. Not louder, not flashier, but calmer, clearer, because they're not proving anything. They're living what's already theirs. Identity isn't built in moments of intensity. It's built in subtle, private decisions. When you speak about your future with certainty, when you treat your dreams as done, not someday, but now, you reinforce the energetic blueprint of the self who already has it. And that identity becomes magnetic, not to impress, but to align. So don't wait for the reward to show up before you change. That's the old paradigm. The new one begins when you realize the reward is just the echo of who you've decided to be. Assume that identity. Let it become your inner posture. Because when you walk as the one who already has it, the world has no choice but to respond. Not because you forced it, but because you remembered it was already yours. Assume it in moments of silence, not just rituals. It's easy to feel powerful when the candles are lit, when the music is soft, when you've carved out time to visualize. Those sacred rituals matter. They anchor your intention. But the true rewiring happens in the spaces in between, in the quiet, unnoticed corners of your day, in the silence of waiting rooms, in the hum of traffic, in the mirror glance while brushing your teeth, because that's when your real assumptions speak. You might meditate for 10 minutes with clarity, and then spend the next hours mentally contradicting it. You declare abundance in the ritual, but default to fear in line at the grocery store. You affirm worthiness in the morning, and question your value in a conversation that catches you off guard. That contrast isn't failure, it's feedback. It shows you where the assumption hasn't yet settled into the subconscious, and that's your invitation, not to shame, but to deeper integration. Assumption isn't built by isolated intensity. It's sculpted through quiet consistency. When you catch your mind drifting into the old story and you gently bring it back, without force, without panic, you are rewriting the narrative. You are teaching your nervous system a new rhythm. That is the real work. Not louder, quieter, not harder, deeper. There is a sacred power in the silent correction, the whispered inner realignment, the soft, "It's done," you say to yourself as you walk through a moment that once triggered doubt. These aren't grand gestures. They're internal acts of devotion, and they are what transform assumption from an idea into an identity. So don't wait for the perfect moment to affirm who you are. Make every moment a portal. Let the mundane become mystical. Let the ordinary become the ground where your new self walks silently, surely and fully assumed, not in ceremony, in daily being. That's where the shift locks in. Before we move on, pause with me for just a moment. If something in you is already shifting, as if a forgotten truth is starting to wake up, I left a quiet reminder for you in the pinned comment. It's not loud, but it's aligned. And if you feel called, take a breath and check it out. Now let's continue. Assume even when triggered. There's a sacred moment most people waste. It's the moment they feel triggered. The heart races, the stomach tightens, the old story rises, sharp and fast. And in that wave of emotion, The first instinct is often retreat, to escape, to quiet it down. But what if that moment, raw, uncomfortable, loud, is not a disruption, but a doorway? You are never more malleable than when you are emotionally open, and triggers do that. They open the subconscious. They expose the assumptions that still govern your reactions, not to shame you, but to invite you to choose differently. This is the alchemy of assumption, using the moment of reactivity to reprogram the energy that created it. To assume while triggered is to plant a new truth in trembling soil. It's not easy. It's not always graceful, but it's sacred. When fear rises and you say within, I am still safe. I am still abundant. I am still chosen. You're not pretending. You're reconditioning. And that's when it goes deepest. When the nervous system is listening most closely. This isn't about bypassing emotion. It's about guiding it, letting the wave come, but deciding the direction it flows. You can cry and still assume. You can shake and still declare. You can feel the old pain flare and still choose to anchor into the new self. That's not weakness. That's spiritual mastery. That's what transforms a trigger from sabotage into ceremony. So let the next wave be your initiation, not into perfection, but into presence, into remembering that even in chaos, you still hold the pen. And when you assume in the middle of the storm, the universe listens, because now your assumption is no longer just a preference. It's who you are, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when it would be easier to forget. And that is when the old story begins to dissolve, not because you ran from it, but because you met it with something stronger, with the self who already knows the truth. The one who assumes no matter what. Assume through body language. Before a word is spoken, before a thought is even complete, your body is already speaking. It speaks your assumptions louder than affirmations ever could. The way you walk into a room, the way your shoulders hold themselves, the way your eyes meet the world. These are the physical prayers your nervous system sends out all day long, and they are either aligned with your desired identity or rehearsing your fears in silence. You cannot fake embodiment. You can say, I am worthy, but if your body folds in shame, the universe responds to the posture, not the phrase. Because the body is not a separate messenger. It is the first temple where your assumption lives. And it remembers. It remembers the years of shrinking, of guarding, of bracing for impact. But it also remembers how to stand tall, how to walk like it's already yours, how to move like someone who trusts the unseen. To assume through body language is to reclaim sacred territory. It's subtle, a shift in how you sit, a calmness in how you breathe, a new rhythm in how you reach for the door, the pen, the phone. It's the difference between effort and embodiment. And it doesn't require performance, it requires presence. You're not pretending to be someone else. You're remembering the version of you who stopped needing to prove anything. This is why small movements matter. The way you put on your jacket, the way you take a breath before speaking. These are not meaningless gestures, they are echoes of who you believe yourself to be. And when those micro-gestures begin to mirror your assumed identity, you stop broadcasting lack. You stop vibrating insecurity. You start becoming a quiet magnet, not for attention, but for alignment. Assumption is not only a mental act, it is a physical presence. When your body participates in your becoming, reality responds. Not because you shouted louder, but because your whole being began to whisper the same truth. I already am. I already have. I already know. And when the body aligns, the world follows. Not in resistance, but in recognition. Assume privately, without external validation. There is a quiet power in those who no longer need to be seen to believe. In a world that constantly asks you to prove, to explain, to show receipts for your becoming, there is something radical about assuming in silence. Not to hide, but to protect the sacred. Not to isolate, but to deepen conviction without the noise of outside opinions. Because when you still need others to believe in your vision before you do, your faith is rented, not rooted. So many unravel their own manifestation by seeking confirmation in others' eyes. They speak of their dreams not from joy, but from subtle anxiety, waiting to see if someone nods, waiting for applause to feel safe enough to continue. But manifestation doesn't require an audience. It requires integrity between your inner and outer worlds. And sometimes, that integrity is most potent when kept in the dark, like seeds buried in silence. To assume privately is to choose inner solidity over external reassurance. It's saying, I don't need you to get it, I get it. And from that place, the vibration becomes untouchable, not because it's hidden, but because it's held. There's no need to perform worthiness when you've already assumed it. There's no urge to post about abundance when you feel it in your breath. That's not secrecy, that's sovereignty. And ironically, when you no longer need the world to mirror your belief, the world begins to do just that. Because now you're not projecting a request, you're emanating a truth. There's a difference between announcing your future and embodying it. The one who embodies it doesn't seek agreement. They walk as if it's done, and that walk changes everything. Let others wonder. Let them sense something has shifted without needing to name it. Let your silence speak, because when you assume without witnesses, the only approval that matters becomes your own. And that kind of belief moves mountains, not by force but by frequency. It's not louder, it's deeper, and in that depth, reality bends. Quietly, inevitably, completely. Assume by preparing your space. The spaces you live in are not neutral. They are living mirrors of your assumptions. Every object, every color, every pile of papers carries a vibration. And the question is, does your environment reflect who you've been or who you've become? Most people try to manifest a new life while surrounded by the echoes of their old one. They dream of abundance while living in spaces arranged by scarcity. They long for transformation while sitting inside the unchanged. But your outer world is a conversation with your inner identity. And to assume at the deepest level, you must let your space begin to prophesy what's coming. Not someday, now. The one who assumes they are wealthy does not need to own luxury. They begin by creating beauty where they are. The one who assumes love is already theirs doesn't wait to be chosen to light candles at dinner. They begin to romance their own space, because the vibration they're holding no longer asks permission. Preparing your space is not about aesthetics, it's about energetic instruction. You are telling your subconscious, this is who we are now. And your subconscious listens best through repetition and atmosphere. So you change the sheets, you clear the clutter. You set the table for one as if it were for two. You light the incense not to impress but to remind yourself, I am already living it. Not pretending, embodying. Your space becomes a vision board you live inside. And every detail reinforces the assumption. The clothes you choose to keep, the images on your walls, the way you organize your time and tools. These are not background choices. They are silent affirmations, building your new reality one drawer, one shelf, one scent at a time. When your space supports your assumed identity, there is less resistance, less contradiction, because now, everything around you whispers the same truth your soul is declaring. It is done. You are already the one. And this is no longer a future you hope to meet. It is a frequency you have made room for. In your closet, in your kitchen, in your presence. You've stopped waiting. You've started preparing. And that shift changes everything. Assume through tiny decisions. It's not the big declarations that rewrite your life. It's the tiny, quiet choices you make when no one's watching. The mind likes to believe transformation happens in a single moment of clarity. But true assumption lives in the small, in the way you choose your coffee mug, in the tone you use when speaking to yourself, in the way you respond to an email, or step into your shoes before leaving the house. These choices don't look dramatic, but they are declarations. Each one is a vote for the identity you've decided to embody. We're conditioned to wait for rituals to feel aligned, for meditation, for journaling, for special moments that signal the beginning of becoming. But life doesn't pause for your transformation. It invites you to practice in motion, and assumption responds to that invitation through micro-decisions that seem insignificant, until they shape your entire trajectory. When you ask yourself, what would the version of me who already has it do right now? You're not seeking perfection, you're seeking resonance. You're aligning with the vibration of the future, not as fantasy, but as instruction. That question bypasses your old habits and awakens a new response pattern. One that doesn't wait for proof. One that acts from knowing. This is how the identity settles into the body. Not by force, by frequency. By repeating subtle acts that say, this is who I am now. You might choose a different word in a conversation. You might take a deeper breath before deciding. You might walk away from a familiar pattern, not because it's wrong, but because it no longer belongs to the version of you that has arrived. These are the sacred details where transformation hides. They don't need to be loud to be effective. In fact, the quietest choices often carry the greatest power, because they're not made to impress. They're made to align. And when your daily actions become a living mirror of your assumed identity, you no longer have to fight for your reality. You simply live into it, moment by moment, choice by choice, until one day, the life you used to visualize has become the space you naturally move through, not because something changed, but because you did. Repeatedly, intentionally, unshakably. Assume even if you feel fake. There is a moment in every transformation where the new identity feels foreign, almost uncomfortable. You whisper affirmations, but your body hesitates. You visualize the new life, but a quiet voice inside murmurs, "This isn't you." That voice can feel so convincing, so final, but it's not a warning. It's a sign, a signal that you've begun to stretch beyond the known. What feels fake at first is often just unfamiliar truth. And that discomfort? It's not proof you're wrong. It's proof you're changing. Your brain is wired for familiarity, not fulfillment. It doesn't register what's true. It registers what's repeated. So when you begin to assume a new identity, a new vibration, a new self-image, your mind might push back. Not because the assumption is false, but because it hasn't settled in yet. This is not failure. This is neuroplasticity. This is the rewiring in motion. You can feel fake and still be aligned. You can feel awkward and still be in truth. What matters is not how natural it feels at first, but how loyal you remain to the identity you've chosen. The mind says, "This is not you." But the soul says, "This is who you've always been," beneath the performance of doubt. And in that tension, you get to decide whose voice leads. Assumption is not about emotional certainty. It's about energetic choice. You're not required to feel 100% every moment. You're only required to remember that every time you hold the new identity, even shakily, it grows stronger. It roots deeper. It becomes more accessible the next time. Until one day, the awkwardness is gone, and all that's left is resonance. So if you feel fake, remember that's not resistance, it's rebirth. It means you're stepping into territory your past never walked. It means you're claiming a vibration your ancestors were never taught to hold. That isn't pretending. That's pioneering. Let that be your new understanding. Let that carry you through the discomfort. Because soon, what feels unfamiliar will become your new normal. Not through force, but through repetition, through quiet faith, through sacred insistence on who you now are, even when it trembles, even when it stutters. Especially then, assume as a vibration of release, not control. There is a sacred difference between declaring something and desperately clinging to it. So many assume with tight fists, with clenched energy, with a hidden demand masked as desire. They say, "It is done," but underneath their hearts still whisper, "Please let it happen." That is not assumption. That is tension. That is spiritualized anxiety dressed as faith. And the universe hears what you feel, not what you say. True assumption doesn't vibrate like control. It vibrates like release. Not resignation, not giving up, but a soft letting go of resistance. A surrender into knowing. It's the feeling of planting a seed and walking away from the soil with quiet confidence instead of digging it up every day to check if it's growing. The one who truly assumes doesn't chase. They choose, and then they rest. Not in passivity, but in alignment. Neville Goddard taught that assumption is fulfilled not by force, but by persistence in identity. And persistence isn't frantic. It's stable. It's quiet. It's the vibration of, "This is who I am and I don't need evidence to keep believing it." That is power. And that power moves the invisible far faster than panic ever could. There is a moment in your journey when you realize that the more relaxed you become, the more magnetic you are. The less you need something, the more available you are to receive it. Because the assumption has settled. It no longer needs to be spoken. It's lived. You're not watching the clock. You're not measuring the delay. You've become so aligned with the outcome that time loses its urgency. That's the space where miracles become ordinary. So if you find yourself grasping, tighten nothing. Instead, breathe. Come back to the body. Return to the place inside you that knows how to receive without chasing. That part of you has always been there. It just needed you to stop trying so hard. The final evidence of assumption is not excitement. It's neutrality. It's the peace that says it's mine, and I no longer need to talk about it. That's when it arrives. Not as a rescue, but as a match. Because your frequency is no longer begging. It's broadcasting. And everything that's meant for you finds you. Not because you demanded it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. You allowed it. And in that allowing, you became the version of you who no longer waits. You became the version who simply is. Assume it, until it's boring. That's when it's yours. There is a sacred shift that occurs on the journey of conscious creation. At first, everything feels heightened. The affirmations tingle in your chest. The visualizations light up your imagination. You speak your desires with passion, as if every word could bend reality in your favor. You feel the spark of becoming, and it ignites your devotion. But then, something changes. The fire cools. The declarations feel less intense. The vision doesn't feel far anymore. It feels familiar. Almost too familiar. So familiar, in fact, that you begin to wonder, am I losing the magic? You're not. You're embodying it. This is the moment few talk about. When the manifestation process stops feeling like a ritual and begins to feel like a rhythm. When what once felt powerful now feels natural. And it's easy to mistake that naturalness for dullness. But it's not boredom. It's embodiment. It means your nervous system has begun to accept the new identity. It means your subconscious has stopped arguing with the vibration. It means the version of you who has is no longer trying to become. It's already here. And because it's here, it no longer needs to be impressive. It just is. Neville Goddard said, "Act as though it were already true." He didn't say act until you're excited. He didn't say act when you feel high vibe. He said act as though. Persistently, silently, without drama, without the emotional spikes. Because what you truly assume doesn't need fireworks, it needs frequency. It needs to become so normal, so embodied, that you forget it was ever something you had to manifest. And this is the highest level of alignment, when the new reality feels less like a dream and more like a baseline. This is where the misunderstanding happens for many. We're conditioned to believe that manifestation is tied to emotional intensity, that the more thrilled or euphoric we feel, the closer we are to receiving. But Dr. Bruce Lipton's work reveals the opposite. The subconscious doesn't change through effort. It changes through repetition in relaxed states, through consistency and identity, not spikes in emotion. You don't need to be thrilled. You need to be steady. And when something becomes boring, it means your system has finally accepted it as normal. That's not stagnation. That's success. Think of how you brush your teeth. You don't celebrate it every time. You don't feel high vibe about it. But you do it because it's who you are. It's your baseline. Now imagine if wealth, love, clarity, ease were integrated the same way. Not because you forced them, but because you repeated them until they settled. Until your body said, yes, this is me now. And that's the point where external proof becomes irrelevant. You no longer need signs. You are the sign. Assumption is not a performance. It's a silent vow. A decision made in the invisible that shifts everything visible. And once you've assumed long enough, it becomes too real to be questioned. That's when you stop counting the days. That's when you stop looking for evidence. Not because you've given up, but because you've grown into the frequency, into the identity, into the reality that once felt far and now feels obvious. This is where miracles happen, but they don't feel like miracles anymore. They feel like logical outcomes to the one who assumed. The check arrives, and you feel calm. The opportunity appears, and you say, of course. The love shows up, and you no longer feel like it's a surprise. Why? Because you've already rehearsed it in your vibration 1,000 times. Because you've already lived it in your posture, in your thoughts, in your breath. The universe didn't give you something new. It matched the frequency you've already been. So if things feel less exciting, lean in. If your affirmations feel quiet, keep going. If your rituals feel ordinary, celebrate. It means the extraordinary is no longer outside you. It means you've stopped striving and started being. It means the identity has shifted, not because of a breakthrough, but because of 1,000 tiny integrations. Assume it until it's boring, until it no longer requires your effort, until you forget what it felt like to live without it. That's when the external arrives. Not as a gift to awaken you, but as a mirror of who you've become. No chase, no performance, just alignment, just arrival, just you, living what you once only dared to imagine, now as your most natural state. Feel the pull? Check the pinned comment. What's there isn't loud, but it might be exactly what you're ready for.